Today we are going to take a look at the 6 rules of editing. While content and ideas are very important to any piece of writing because that is what we want to convey through our writings, it is not enough by itself. How we express it and the way we express it is equally important. For a reader, the mechanics of writing that is used by the writer, which involves organization of ideas, the style and grammar, and the language that is used, all of it makes the assimilation of information an enjoyable process while reading if it is done well. This is exactly the reason why we need to pay attention also to the writing process of any work. The less time a reader spends trying to understand each sentence in a piece of writing, the more he or she will spend assimilating or focusing on what the actual content is. Now, associated with this is the idea of editing. What is editing? Editing is basically the process of revising and reframing a piece of writing to make it more concise, grammatically error free, organized, and stylistically consistent throughout the piece while maintaining the meaning that it wants to convey. Now, editing, whether it is self editing or editing somebody else's work, involves different kinds of revisions, and one of them is proofreading. So, proofreading is not editing, proofreading is only a part of editing, and it is important that we understand the difference. So, even before we offer our own pieces of writing for anybody to read, for whatever reason, whether it's a report, whether it is an assignment, an essay that you write, it is important to edit it so that we send it to the reader error free and make the process of reading for the reader better. We're going to take a quick look at some of the golden rules for editing. The first one is remember that you're writing to express and not to impress. While bombastic sounding vocabulary is great, most of the time the meaning may get lost when you are trying to include too many high sounding vocabulary or words into your writing. So, as far as possible, if you have by mistake used too many of these kind of words, try to cut down these kind of high sounding words from your writing. Keep the writing simple and the expressions also simple. Try to avoid cliches because it makes it very, very boring. If you are writing a piece which is field specific and it is meant for an audience which is much more diverse, please remember to avoid jargons because it would make it difficult for them to read and understand because they may not know the technical terms. Pay attention to the fact that you don't sound stilted in your writing and that you write naturally in the style that you always have. The more natural you are going to sound in the writing, the better you will be able to communicate and connect with your reader. Rule number 2, be specific. Keep it to the point because modern readers, especially, do not have time to read long, winding pieces. So, as far as possible, get your ideas across in minimum number of words and sentences. So use short sentences, use clear sentences which expresses ideas very clearly. Write in short paragraphs. Keep in mind that each paragraph should carry only one idea and should not have too many ideas or too many examples also included into a single paragraph. Always try to avoid that. Write in active voice as far as possible because again it helps to connect better and the sentences also sound better because the subject is in the primary focal position in these sentences. Then make rule number 3 is make the style consistent throughout. Remember that if you have a particular style of writing and you generally use a certain kind of vocabulary or a certain way of writing, try to ensure that you consistently keep that style of writing throughout the piece. If especially you're borrowing from other writers, or you're borrowing from other literary works, or maybe even other literatures that you have reviewed, then please remember that while quoting it again, as far as possible summarize it rather than adding in huge quotations, because it breaks your style of, the way you have written, and generally then the flow also breaks. So as far as possible, if you're quoting from some other sources, if they are long quotation, it is preferable that you actually summarize it and mention it in your writing to maintain the consistency of the style that you're using. Check for punctuations and its usages, because it's very important how you're using your commas, your semicolons, your full stops, that add more meaning to the reader in how a particular sentence should be read, or how you want them to read a particular sentence, and where you are laying your emphasis in the statements. Spell check without fail, both the ways. One, you should yourself also run through the entire document to ensure that there are no spelling errors. Other than this, because of modern technology, you have a number of apps and other things available with your documents which allow you to run spell checks also. So use both the sources in order to ensure that there are no spelling errors in the document. Rule number 4 is brevity is the secret of good writing. Again, like I said, not just concise writing, you need to ensure that you're not wasting words, that you're not repeating yourself, and you're not saying the same thing over and over again in different languages, or different set of words, or sentence construction. So do not waste word. Do tight editing wherever you feel that something is not making sense. Rather than including it in the writing, it's better to edit it out. You can always put it as a PS in case you find some clarifications later on. But if it is not making sense, or it is not going with the flow of the writing, then please edit it out. It is fine to leave out certain sections if it is not very important or core to the entire writing. And every word that you are using should count. It should have some meaning in order for the writing to be of importance and create the impact that you want. Rule number 5, pay attention to the boring bits also. So once you've finished editing the smaller parts or smaller details of your writing, the overall flow also has to be paid attention to. So ensure that you have shorter paragraphs, one idea per paragraph. All the paragraphs are correctly organized, that they are placed in the correct order. Use connectors or linkages, linking words to link the paragraphs. If the length has to be shortened, if a particular number of words have been given to you and you're expected to finish writing within those number of words, then always start shortening from the bottom, because most of the time when we arrange or organize a piece of writing, we keep all the important parts on the top, and as we come towards the fag end of our writing, we generally keep the unimportant points. So it's always better to cut from the bottom than from the top. So arrange it always that way to ensure that you also keep to the word limit that is prescribed for you. And the last rule is read and read again to spot mistakes. So after you have done a thorough work of your editing, even after that, it would be a good idea to run through it a couple of times more to ensure that there are no more mistakes. Or if you feel that you may not be able to spot it, it's always fine to give it to somebody else to read it before you actually submit it or finalize the document, because they may be able to see certain mistakes which you may not have spotted because you have been looking at the document too often. So these are some of the rules of editing which you have to keep in mind in order to write a compelling piece, or whatever piece of writing you're doing, to make it more impactful and the communication more clear, because you're not going to be around to explain the matters in it which the reader may not understand. Therefore, you have to make double effort or take double effort in order to ensure that your writing is flawless and goes without mistakes to the reader. That's it for today.